right, folks, today's webinar is going to be about branding and marketing strategy during tough times. Tough times can help you strengthen your position in your company, in your marketplace. Continuing brand and marketing communications during tough times may not just be a smart strategy, it is a very important business opportunity that you cannot afford to miss. So I'm very excited about this webinar. If you are excited, write down yes in the chat box. Go to the chat box and tell me, type in yes if you are excited about the webinar. Let's get the energy flowing. Okay, the chat has started rolling. I think the stage is set, and we have someone who is I've got the fortune to meet him personally as well, Mr. Harish Bijoor. He is a brand thinker, a practitioner operating out of Bangalore. He runs Harish Bijoor Consultants. That's a consulting presence across global markets. He spent his career across sectors like FMCG, telecom, consumer durables. He's a public speaker, author. He teaches at the Indian Business School of Business, Hyderabad and Mohali. Someone who's very passionate about what he does, someone who's an expert, someone we all love to listen. So with a huge round of applause, I know we cannot hear the applause, but do give a round of applause to welcome Mr. Harish Bijoor.
Thank you. Thank you, Anmol, for that very generous introduction. I think we live in tough times, and I will jump straight into the bandwidth of your time and try to talk to you about the subject which I'm addressing today. First of all, I've always believed that power corrupts, and I keep saying PowerPoint corrupts even more. And therefore, I'm not going to use a PowerPoint presentation with you guys. Instead, I'm going to depend on my mind, and possibly the good old way, I'm using some pencil prompts which are going to say what I'm going to be talking about. So I've got 6 pencil prompts like this. You know, there are many others coming by, and each of these are going to prompt me to say what I must say. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is an introduction to the situation today. Of course, all of us are in a lockdown, and I think a lockdown which is very, very necessary. If you look at it, I think clients are in a lockdown today. And I'm told that many of you are entrepreneurs, many of you are businesses, many of you are people wanting to be in businesses in the future. But there is a big but, and that but is the fact that we live in times which are tumultuous. We live in times which we have never ever seen before. In my entire lifetime, for sure, this is the biggest catastrophe the world has witnessed. Yes, I'm told people double my age or triple my age have seen others. But if you really look at it, I think COVID-19 is a defining point in our entire sets of lives. First of all, it's about life itself. It's shaking life. Secondly, it's about the subset of life, which is the economy. It's shaking the economy. It's about a subset of the economy, which is called business. It's shaking businesses. It's about a subset of business, which is marketing. It has shaken every marketing person around. It is a subset of called branding, which is a subset of marketing, and shaken branding altogether. And at the end of the day, people who buy brands are consumers. And guess what, guys? COVID-19 has shaken and stirred us like never before. So my start point, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that COVID-19 is a defining point in the marketing lives that are going to roll out in the future. And therefore the subject, which I'm going to jump into in a little while. A lockdown is a beautiful point of time for all of us to be sitting in our homes, hopefully, and thinking, and listening, and contributing, and learning, and possibly putting together the pathway for the future that you and I want to follow in the realm of business and marketing, leading, of course, to our lives of the future. Having said that, I think what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be talking to you about a set of thoughts, 5 thoughts really, and each one of these I will close and move to the next, and I will close at the end of about 20-22 minutes. And maybe I'll take a set of questions from each one of you. And the questions that I'm not able to take, you're welcome to mail me later at my personal email ID, which is harishbijoor hotmail.com. And I promise to reply to you if you do say that you were on this webinar within 24 hours. Okay. Lockdown time, thinking time, clients are in lockdown. Ever since we closed my office and said all of us are going to work from home, all of us are working overtime from home. Basically because a lockdown time is thinking time for the client. You have clients, I have clients, and your client and my client are able to think now. And guess what? Normally, a client is on a roller coaster. Normally, the client is on a treadmill, which he just never leaves. And this very client today is possibly sitting back and thinking and saying, how does business unfold into the future? And as clients do this, and as all of us work overtime with our web counseling, web consulting, and webinars, I think it's time to look at how marketing is to shape up in the future that is ahead. What must a marketer do? Now that is my pencil prompt to say, what must a marketer do? Now, what must a marketer do? That's a standard question everybody is asking me today, okay? And when you ask me that question, my simple answer is nothing, nothing, okay? Week one of the lockdown, really, my answer was nothing. Week two of the lockdown, my answer is nothing. And I suspect in week three of the lockdown, I will tell marketers, don't do anything. All the clients I advise, I've told them very clearly, don't do a thing in terms of marketing, because this is a wait and watch moment. This is a wait and watch moment when marketers must maintain a dignified distance from consumers and consumer marketing tools. Why? Because the consumer is very highly sensitized at this point of time. Aren't you? Am I not? You are a consumer, I am a consumer. All of us are sensitized by COVID-19. The only thing we want to hear is how the disease is progressing. The only thing we want to see is what's happening to the disease control situation. And the only thing you and I are looking at is that WhatsApp University to try and see what's WhatsApp University telling us. So to an extent, we're only concerned about information. We're not concerned about too much else. My advice to marketers like you and I is maintain a dignified distance from the consumer. Be a part of the consumer because you are a consumer. I am a consumer. Use and wear your consumer hat and behave and think like a consumer, but do not behave like a marketer, because a marketer in tough times must maintain a dignified distance from consumers. So this is what you have to do, which means don't do anything, but just do one thing. Try and look at that integrity kitty in your marketing cupboard and try and see, can you bring some integrity into your response when it comes to COVID-19? What is integrity of response? Integrity of response is to say, I shall not think about I, me, myself, the marketer, but I shall think of a lot more people than I, me, myself. Which means to say that, hey guys, during a crisis, during a tough time, a marketer must think a lot more about others than about himself or herself. A marketer must not think his own brand. A marketer should think consumer and the angst the consumer is going through. The marketer must not think of his own price mechanisms. And yes, there are a couple of them who have taken price increases during the year of COVID-19. And all I can tell them is that karma happens, and karma is something that we need to be careful about. Don't think about your product. Don't think about your price. Don't think about marketing and promotion and advertising at this point of time. Take a back seat and think consumer. Those who think consumers will show integrity in that process. So the first thing to do is pack integrity into the process of branding altogether. The next thing is I have a prompt, a pencil prompt, which says my 4 phases. Now this is a theory I talk about I have been talking about in all my webinars since day 2 of the lockdown. My four phases of the consumer is and the marketer. What must a marketer do during this phase? A marketer must wait. That is the waiting phase. The waiting phase is likely to go on up to 3 to 5 weeks from the first day of lockdown in India. The second phase is the act phase. That's the time you must act. And that act phase could last you maybe 6 months ahead. And the third phase is resume cautiously as a phase. Resume cautiously. Marketing and everything that marketing does. That might follow from that 6 month onwards. And then the final phase is the business as usual phase. So essentially, the first phase is the wait phase. Wait for 3 to 6 weeks post the lockdown, day 1. The second phase is the act phase. You can act, but you can act differently for 6 months. And the third phase is actually resume your business ethos and practices cautiously after those 6 months. And maybe 6 months hence, we come back to the stage which says the business as usual phase. Let me peep a little bit into these 4 phases that I spoke to you about. What are these phases? The wait phase is one, the first one. The wait phase is one where the consumer is confused. When the lockdown started, the consumer was totally confused. The consumer is in panic. The consumer is in anger. Why is this happening to me? Panic, confusion, and anger. I think at that particular stage, the consumer is very, very irrational. At this point of time, the consumer is 10 listening and 90 talking, in the sense that the consumer is giving vent to his or her feelings more than wanting to listen to anybody. When the consumer is listening, only 10 listening and 90 talking, completely wrong time for the marketer to think of messaging to the consumer. And that's one of the reasons I say the wait phase is a very, very important phase when marketers must stay away from the market. And we're going through the wait phase. And at this stage, the consumer is thinking of I, me, myself, and my family of 4.5 other people. The census of India says we have 5.5 people in an average Indian home. I've been to many Indian homes, never found that half a person, but that's how statistics are. You are bothered about those 5.5 people within your home, full stop. At this stage, marketing, no entry. The second phase. The second phase is the act phase, which I'm talking to you about. Maybe after these 6 weeks, you will act. At this point of time, the consumer has settled down substantially. The consumer has settled down to an extent where the consumer is listening 50 and talking 50. 50-50. Oh, that's good. So the consumer who in the first phase, when everything broke out suddenly, was only listening 10, is now listening 50. And I think this is the stage when you can act a little and when you can talk to the consumer a little. The consumer is letting go. The consumer is more settled now. The consumer is more accepting. The consumer is more willing. And at this point of time, the consumer is even more rational. In the first phase, he and she and they were totally irrational. But at this stage, he and she and they are actually more rational. At this point of time, the consumer is us-centric. I think of I, me, myself first, and then I think of an outer circle, which is I, me, myself, and my family of 5.5. And then at this stage, at the act stage, I'm thinking of I, me, myself, my family of 5.5 total, and my community. So the consumer is concerned about not only himself and herself and themselves, but about the community. At this stage, I think very important for marketers to say, let's talk the language of community. The marketer cannot be malignant in his marketing approach. The marketer needs to be totally benign in his marketing approach. The marketer needs to be thinking community, thinking society, thinking of doing good to others. And therefore, my dear friends, many a marketer in this country is going to be jolted on this because marketers are not these kind of animals. Sometimes we tend to tout and say that we are this benign marketing organization. Hey guys, stop that. That's a charade, has been a charade. Time to wake up and say that the marketing organization needs to morph into a more us kind of an organization than a more I kind of an organization. Over centuries, over the last 100, not centuries really, over the last 120 years of marketing, we have always propitiated the importance of the individual. The smallest unit of society is the biggest unit for the marketer, and the smallest unit of society is the individual. I think marketing needs to now talk less individual and more us, and that's one of the changes that will occur in phase 2. The third phase, and the third phase is certainly business is resume it cautiously, but at this point of time, I'm saying, hey, the consumer is more accepting, the consumer is thinking community more and more, and this is the power of the moment the consumer is living in, because please note one more thing. When all these things jolt our lives, all of a sudden, fatalism hits us in the solar plexus. All of a sudden, a lot of us who ever thought we will never ever die, suddenly are becoming cautious about the fact that life is finite. Finite lives dictate finite marketing. Infinite lives dictate infinite marketing. By that I mean, finite lives are looking for marketing which is more holistic, marketing that's more sensitive, marketing that's more sensible, marketing that's more inclusive. And I think that's something that comes in phase 3 when we are saying that the feelings and emotion-driven moments of people need to be captured. And at this point of time, people are looking for solutions. People are not looking at problems. Problems I don't want, I want solutions. And when people look at solutions, marketers need to provide solutions. And these solutions marketers provide must not be only in terms of the products and services that they're taking out to them, but they need to be in terms of the entire ecosystem of marketing that you build and convey to the people out there. Okay, guys, at this stage, in the phase 3, when I'm suggesting that the marketer must act cautiously, act inclusively, the consumer is listening more. The consumer is listening 70% now and is talking 30%. And the consumer is becoming reasonably rational, is rational, but wants to listen as well at this point in time. The fourth stage then, the last of the 4 stages, it's business as usual phase, which I keep talking about. What is the business as usual phase? The business as usual phase is when back to the good old days, the way we used to market to people. Ouch, that's not a great thing. That's not a great phase to be in. But guess what, guys? Even this shall pass. Proverbially and really, public memory is short. And guess what? People have a habit of forgetting things quick and fast. When that comes by, at that particular stage, I think consumers are listening 99% and are talking only 1%. And the consumer is once again irrational. And marketers with their irrational approaches once again go and touch the consumer. Again, out here, at this stage, my recommendation to marketers is try to be sensitive, more sensitive than you and I were before COVID-19. Try to make those changes in our entire lives, which will touch people intrusively and inclusively. And let's not go back to the bad old ways of marketing, because as a marketer, you and I must appreciate there are the bad old ways of marketing as well. So let's leave all that and let's kind of, sacrifice it at the altar of COVID-19, so to say, and let's move across and do things differently. My last point before I take questions from you is going to be, so I've given you those 4 phases. The last point is COVID-19, I call it an economic pandemic. COVID-19 is an economic pandemic. COVID-19 is a health pandemic, yes, but COVID-19, more importantly than being a health pandemic, is an economic pandemic. I was looking at numbers and I was trying to look at the stock market globally, and there's one number which says that the stock market is down by 30 trillion US dollars for the first time in the economy of the global stock market by and large. And let's take 9 large stock markets. Essentially, what's really happened is COVID is an economic pandemic more than a health pandemic, because a lot of us in the world are poor people. The world has a total of 7 billion people. And if I put 7 billion people on a pyramid, the top 2 billion people are the rich and the bottom 5 billion are the poor. So the bottom 5 billion people are the ones which are the toughest hit by COVID-19. There are no jobs. First of all, we had problems with jobs, and now those jobs themselves are a problem. There are no crops, whether it be cash or others, and we are having problem in terms of, the crop reaching the market, etc., etc. And overall, there are no daily wage jobs. The gig economy is dead, and the gig economy is a daily wage economy, if you ask me. The gig economy is not only about, the guy who does a show, who does a comic show, or a guy who actually plays a music in a band. But it's also about that Uber driver. It's about everybody else who works just once a day. It's about that daily laborer who actually carries those bricks and takes it to the construction site. I think that economic pandemic is something marketers need to look carefully at and need to think, how am I going to help solve this economic pandemic? It's a health pandemic, it's an economic pandemic. Both these, health and the economy, are tough to handle. Having said that, I think I've come to that point of time at 11:53 where I said I'm going to take some questions. So let me take questions from you. Over to you, Anmol.
Thank you, Mr. Bijoor. Those are really good insights. So everyone can start typing out your questions. I'll pick a few randomly and I will put them across to Mr. Bijoor. Keep the questions coming in. Okay, let's start off with this. So please tell us a few good improved versions of marketing. I think he's probably referring to some channels of marketing.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's channels of marketing or you're really talking about advertising. I'm going to take the advertising viewpoint for the moment now.
Sure.
The first thing I've said is don't advertise. But even when you advertise, try to be a little more sensitive. So when the pandemic actually hadn't even become a pandemic or was announced to be a pandemic, there were companies which were manufacturing hand washes in the Indian market. And these companies were actually taking out half-page ads in the papers and telling people to wash their hands, okay? And when they said wash your hands, they had their main brand out there and they had all their brands at the bottom, full stop. Now, this is not very sensitive advertising during a pandemic. A pre-pandemic, it's fine. There is a trouble in the market. I want people to use hand washes. The hand wash market is going to go through the roof. The hand sanitizer market is going to go through the roof. The masks are going to go through the roof. But hey guys, during a pandemic, important thing for you to say is you must wash your hands with soap and water. And this is the way to wash, and show them the entire thing, the way it's to be done. And you must have all the 20 brands of soaps, yours, your competitors, and everybody's out there. What are you trying to say? I am one of them, and I'm one of them who's trying to do this. Yes, you'll get a lot of positive strokes for doing this, but people must not be able to say whose brand this is. So that's sensitive advertising.
Sure. Have you observed any brands that have responded well to COVID in a very sensitive manner? Any examples?
Well, brands will be brands, and brands are naughty at times. So Eveready was naughty. When Modi ji said that, let's all go out there and light lamps yesterday evening, that is on, on the 5th, 9 p.m., 9 minutes, candle, torch. It could have been a candle. It could have been a diya. It can be a torch. Eveready chose to showcase its torch in a full-page ad. Nifty, snazzy, not too bad, and I'm not complaining.
Sure, point taken. Vandana says, how to survive as an entrepreneur, how to pay salary and rent. I'm sure this is a question a lot of entrepreneurs are facing. Yeah.
Vandana, this is a serious question which all of us need to answer. It's all very fashionable for people to say that take care of the people who work for you. Ensure that you pay their salaries continuously without question. But for an entrepreneur, it becomes difficult because the entrepreneur himself or herself is bootstrapped, has got a little bit of money, is not working on the funds of a PE investor, and the entrepreneur has got a little bit of cash in the bank. That cash in the bank will run out within a month and a half. So when the cash in the bank runs out in 45 days, what do I do? Hey, the answer is simple. Small entrepreneurs will take care of their people up to the point of time when there's money in the bank. When that goes, what happens? So there's going to be a disaster ahead for us, an economic disaster as I'm calling it. And therefore my view is that the government of India needs to step in dramatically at this point of time. This is a financial emergency. This is an economic emergency. In the economy, there are four kinds of players. One, the big corporate. Two, the small corporate. Three, the large entrepreneur. And four, the small entrepreneur. I think the population of small entrepreneurs in this country is the largest. I think the government must step in there because please note, every small entrepreneur supports the economic situation around him, supports an ecosystem around him. He gives employment to maybe 20 people, and those 20 people must be taken care of. If you take care of the small entrepreneur will take care of the economy around him and her. I say the same thing to people who are rather well enabled in life, who live in some of the better enclaves, in apartments, who have all the money with them. Please take care of your maid servants first. What must I do, people ask me? Firstly, take care of your maid servants. During the lockdown, don't penalize them on wages. If they fall sick, please take care of their health. Please take care of your immediate ecosystem. If every home takes care of its immediate ecosystem, it's quite likely that they will take care of their immediate ecosystem. And believe it or not, in this food chain we live in, there are too many rungs. We need to take care of every rung.
Sure. Hope the government is listening. All right, we have a question from Senthil Nathan. There are a lot of textile entrepreneurs on this group, and textile is largely a commodity business. Very small percentage of it happens to be branded. What is your approach for textile entrepreneurs?
Okay, first of all, I must say that, Senthil has asked the question.
Yes, Senthil,
my view is this, that, I worked a lot in the textile side of the business. I have a fair number of clients out here. I've been talking to them for donkey's years on what to do. If you ask me, for instance, textile was already in trouble. Textile, Tirupur, if you really look at it, I mean, is in trouble, has been in trouble for the past 2 years. And guess what? This creates even bigger trouble for Tirupur. Important thing for the textile industry is possibly to jump out of its shell of product evolution, if you really look at it. Products need to be differently made for the world that is looking for these kind of products. Look at the gaps in the product arena that you and I are talking about. Look at the way a standard textile industry, instead of going only for pure wovens, can really talk of non-wovens today. In fact, today's biggest industry is not the textile industry. Today's is the non-woven industry. Every PPE that is to be manufactured is completely non-woven, is meant to be of a particular different configuration altogether. Everything which is, anti-viral garments. I mean, all of us know that there exist garments which are antibacterial, anti-viral, anti-fungicidal, etc., etc. These are all techniques and technologies which have been there, but I don't think we're invested enough in looking at half of this. I think COVID-19 is going to change our entire mindset. We were in trouble already in textile. We've gotten into deeper trouble. The only way to get out of it is innovate on the product cycle that we are going to churn out for the market.
Thank you, Bijoor. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, please.
Sure. So consumers are habituated doing work from home. What changes will this reflect in the marketing strategy? This is by Manikandan.
Okay, Manikandan, first of all, marketing strategy. I mean, a lot of people who work from home are wearing casuals. So first of all, the fashion industry has come out today with, work from home couture. Okay, fashion garments which are meant for work from home. They're much more comfortable. They're not going to be tight shirts like this or etc. etc. They're much more comfortable. All I'm saying is when it comes to work from home, a lot of things are going to get redefined, right? The commute is getting redefined, the expenditure on petrol is getting redefined, the air conditioning that you used to use in your office is getting redefined. There are a lot of savings coming in n numbers of terrains as well. As all of this falls into place, work from home is going to become the future for sure. And I think some of the IT companies I work with, we had already brought in that kind of a mode. We had a Wednesday work from home, then we made it Thursday work from home, 2 days from home, 3 days from home. So these IT companies, particularly in Bengaluru and in Noida, were able to adapt and adopt the new way of doing things. I think work at home is a great thing to do, provided we are able to maintain the discipline. I personally am not liking work from home because prior to work from home, I used to go to an office and then come back home. And after I came back home, it was my time. Now I don't have that time. If I don't go to office, I am at home and my day starts at 8 a.m. in the morning and it's finishing at about 10:30 in the night. Fundamentally, because when you work from home, there's no discipline of putting work in one silo and life in another side. All of us must learn to do that.
Okay, Mr. Bijoor, I have a question from my end. So what are the fun activities that you've been doing, to keep yourself up? Something that you've not done before, but this lockdown gave you an opportunity.
Oh God, not too many fun activities because I've been on webinars and I've been on web consulting. But I started getting innovative. I started thinking of pencil prompts like this. Okay, these are flags which I do. I do marble points. I do demonstration points because I don't like to use PowerPoint, as I told you. So I keep using stuff like that. Apart from that, I think, if I had the time, I'd really love to read a lot more, but haven't been able to do that. I'd love to exercise a little more, but I don't know if that's going to be possible as well. But I'd love to do a lot of fun things. I'd love to watch a long 3-hour movie, chill out, and just in my beanbag. I'd love that. I think these are things we must always reinvent and get back. And my advice is all of us must take time to do that. Starting with I.
You should catch up on a movie tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, we have one question coming from Kishore. Travel and tourism industry has been badly hit, and there's going to be a phobia to travel as well once the lockdown opens up. What would you suggest for folks in this particular industry, travel, tourism, hospitality?
Kishore, you're absolutely right. Travel, tourism, hospitality, all in deep trouble. We are going to rethink the way we are going to travel again and travel. I was looking at visuals of a one-person flight taking off from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans yesterday, and which means that the industry is in deep, deep trouble. Reinventing this is going to take a lot. It just means that the hygiene phobia is going to be looked at very, very carefully by everybody. If the travel industry is able to tell you that 100 on 100 I take care of the hygiene issues that you have, I think things will bounce back over a period of time. But it's that assurance. That assurance cannot be just a word of mouth assurance. It has to be a quantified assurance, an audited assurance. So we're going to have a new audit standard. And the audit standard is to say, how clean are you? And clean practice marketing is the future for the travel industry. How clean are you? How hygienic are you? In the beginning, everybody would tell us we're all clean, we're all hygienic. But we still see those restaurants where, they're packing food and they're puffing open the packet with their mouths, or where they're frosting the cake and they're blowing the glitter with their mouth onto the cake, stuff like that. All this will need to go. The old practices of hygiene will need to be replaced by the new practices. And if the old practice was 5, the new has to be 100. So this goes for an Uber taxi. I mean, it goes for a taxi player. How hygienic are they? And are they going to be hygiene meters? An airline tomorrow could provide hygiene meters to the people to say, well, this is the hygiene meter on my flight. You check it yourself. It's like walking into a room and checking the temperature in a room you're checking the hygiene standards of stuff around. Okay, you're going to be provided maybe ultraviolet lights to say, please use these lights and see if there are any germs around, because we are confident there are no germs around. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. A lot
Only
of users.
one question.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, Mr. Prabhu. Yeah.
Sir, the West, how they will view Chinese from the business point of view? All these confusions and disturbances, knowingly or unknowingly, emerged
Yes.
from China.
Yes.
And how the West and US consumers may look the Chinese business point of view?
Well, Mr. Prabhu, your question is absolutely, I know where it comes from. It's a very important question, because China is the start point of it all. Let's say Wuhan is not a good word anymore, and China itself has taken on a lot of negative pressures on its image. How is it going to shape in the future? The first thing that's going to happen to China is that people are going to first say that, hey, listen, I need to be very careful with my supply chain efficiencies altogether, in the sense that I cannot depend on one country for my supply chain efficiencies. And therefore, what's going to happen is a fair bit of business is going to shift from China to Vietnam first, and then India. Okay, why Vietnam? Because that's a very aggressive country. Why not India? We're not at all aggressive, folks. We are one of the laziest ones in business attraction projects that we should have done 20 years ago. Textile, for instance, or anything related to anything labor intensive, a fair bit of this work will shift out of China. So let's be thinking about how India can capture this opportunity. Let's kind of create those strategic catch points which we lay out in the market and say that we can bring it in. Sir, to the textile industry, I have been talking about this for the past 8 years. Okay, starting from my first conference, which I addressed for Citi, I think long ago, starting to all the Coimbatore conferences that I've done, because after all, Coimbatore is the capital of textile in so many ways. And in Tirupur, I've been to Tirupur and addressed, the Garment Association out there. But listen, guys, I think time to start working and stop talking and listening to people. I've got conference vultures who come and listen, but they don't do a thing about it. Wake up, wake up. I have tried to wake people up. The best industry bodies I've spoken at, I have given strategic mindsets to them to work on, sir. But where is the action, sir? That is the problem. I think your question is absolutely right, sir. Firstly, we have a fantastic opportunity to position India correctly and overall versus China. Because, Vietnam will grab, but Vietnam has got a threshold
Limitations.
up to which it can take things, limitations. After Vietnam's cup overflows, that overflow must be captured by India. And therefore, we need an aggressive plan. And the government of India needs to support this plan as well. Because the industry doesn't have that money to support it.
Correct.
Yes.
Perfect answer, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Harish, a lot of people are asking, what's one good book recommendation, either on marketing, brands, that people can read during this lockdown?
That is something that I have to look into my bookshelf and tell you. But I think, it should not be anything about marketing. It should be about a book which I think is about self-discovery. And I'm going to tell you what that is. And I think this is a good book to look at. Ikigai. I would advise you to read it. Because, why am I advising you to read Ikigai, all of you? Fundamentally, it will help us define the way we think. And that's the way we think. And, you look at what you're good at, what you must be good at, what you must do, what you mustn't do. I think this Ikigai is a very relevant book at this point of time in our lives. And of course, in the future, hopefully, I'll put something together on post-COVID marketing. Okay.
Yeah, we would love to have a look at that post. What is it that we can read? Lovely. I think Ikigai is something that I should pick up next few days. Okay. George Thomas says, do you think there will be a change in the channel delivery in the way education happens in India? I think he's referring to more of
very good
happening
question.
online. Yeah.
Very good question. EdTech. EdTech is something I'm very, very excited about. We work with 3 clients in EdTech, and we've been doing that for the past 4 years since when they got bootstrapped. if you really look at it, this is the moment of EdTech. Every school needs to have a tech avatar. Some schools, maybe 100% tech schools, in the sense 100% e-schools, and some will be 50-50, some will be 20-80. But this hedge must be there. Morning I was reading a statistic to say that, there are schools in Bengaluru who have gone onto e-teaching platforms, but 43% of the parents don't have a desktop to get their children to look at. Therefore, there's a hardware gap. That hardware gap should be bridged over a period of time. Webinars, for instance, take my personal example. I do a fair bit of public speaking all over. Now I'm hamstrung. I cannot travel, and when you can't travel, you're like tied down. Now, what happens to those talks which I used to do? Well, seamlessly, I've converted it into webinars. I do 90-minute webinars, and people aren't complaining about the fact that, hey, you're not here personally, because you can't be there personally. Therefore, your business must be e-insulated. My company name is Harish Bijoor Consults Inc. I have a second avatar now. Harish Bijoor E-Consults Inc. And that's the way to go, guys. We need to have an e-avatar. Ed is the future, because education is something we will not compromise.
Sure. Kamalini says, what is your advice to new young entrepreneurs? I believe she's referring to you and I.
Okay. New young entrepreneurs, young certainly, and new, possibly you new and me young. Okay. So if you look at it, new and young entrepreneurs, what are we talking about? I think, first of all, redefine your business model from the way you thought it. In the beginning, when you thought of your business model, you thought of it in the era pre-COVID-19. Don't. The era is totally different now. If you can think a new model of the same business that you wanted to create and perform with COVID-19 realities in mind, please go and do that. Do that, because it's something that can be very, very useful. I'm recommending this to a client company of mine. This is a 860 crore company. And I'm recommending this company to insulate about 500 crores of its value in a completely different mindset to the market of the future. Except for two industries, alcohol and liquor, every other industry has to rethink the way it looks at its consumers of the future. Those two industries somehow are blessed industries.
Right.
Right. Okay. Shall we call it a day?
Sure. Yeah. So I think we've had over 100 questions coming in. So okay. I believe what I'm going to do is paste your email ID again for all the people who are joining in. This is Harish Bijoor at hotmail.com. I've just sent it in the chat. Do
perfect.
Ask in your questions, and Mr. Bijoor will reply to them. So thank you so much, Mr. Bijoor.